to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. Well, today is, let's see, what is it? It's the second Wednesday of the month. So it's time for a brand new show called Rewind Your Body Clock with Jayney Goddard. Please welcome her to the show. It's nice to see you, Jayney. It's been a while.
Thank you. Yes, it has, AJ. Absolutely. Yes. Well, I think last time I saw you was just prior in person, was just prior to lockdown. So that gives some perspective. I think it was the NHA conference last
wow, that
time.
was a long time ago. What have you been keeping yourself busy with?
Oh my goodness. Growing the main organization, growing the Complementary Medical Association, which has just become this amazing global force for good, educating people on the paths that they can take to real, true, ultimate, vibrant wellness, writing more books and just doing a ton of Zooms. I think we all presently, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Now we have quite a few international guests on the monthly lineup. Want to tell people where you're Zooming from?
Yes, well, it's very, very dark outside, and that's because I'm in England. I'm on the south coast in a beautiful little medieval fishing village called Hastings. Yeah. For those of you who remember your school history, do you remember the Battle of Hastings in 1066, which was the Norman invasion? I don't know if that rings any bells with anybody, but it's one of those things. It was a pivotal moment in history, apparently. So, and that's where I am.
Fantastic. How long have you been involved in complementary medicine? And maybe a quick definition, what is it?
Yes. Okay. Well, complementary medicine in the USA, you would tend to call it integrative medicine. It's just a terminology. Integrative medicine is a newer term. It's maybe slightly better, but complementary medicine essentially is where we take the best of both worlds. So, for example, I practice holistic medicine, but if I had a patient who had a medical crisis that needed medical attention, then I'm not going to be sort of giving them, acupuncture or homeopathic remedies or anything like that, or even a nutritional program. I would be rushing them to hospital if that's what was needed. But by the same token, when you've got situations where you've got chronic disease, this is where holistic medicine actually really wins out. So in complementary medicine, we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, it's my way or the highway. We acknowledge that there are two very, very important directions towards health and well-being, and that conventional medicine has some extraordinary things to offer. The adage I always give is that, if you've got somebody, let's say I had a patient who was a type 1 diabetic, chances are 99.9% recurring that we're never ever going to get that person off insulin unless they're caught incredibly early. Even then it's doubtful. But by the same token, what we can do with our approach, with a really holistic health approach, what we can do is we can actually prevent a progression to all of those problems that we see with poorly controlled diabetes, type 1, type 2, type 2.5, gestational diabetes, and so on. So this is why what we do is so, so important. It's why I've dedicated the last 35 years of my life to this field. And it really is, it is a life's work, but it's a rewarding life's work.
That's fantastic. So how far can we rewind our body clock?
Good question. Well, my situation, AJ, I don't know if you remember, but when I was on your show previously, I touched on this. And I myself have an array of autoimmune conditions. And at one point, I was deathly sick. I was actually admitted to hospice care, really not expecting to survive. The core condition was rheumatoid arthritis, which doesn't just affect joints. This is something that is not really understood about autoimmunity. It's a systemic condition, whatever it is, whether it's rheumatoid arthritis or multiple sclerosis. Type 1 diabetes is also autoimmune. These things are systemic illnesses, and they make you, or they have the potential to make you very, very, very sick indeed, as happened to me. And so what actually happened when I was very, very poorly, I went on this kind of adventure. What am I going to do to sort this out? I'd been a wheelchair user at that point for nearly 10 years. I was languishing in hospice care. I thought, I can't accept this. This is not something that, I didn't sign up for this. And so I had my skill sets, my natural healthcare skill sets, holistic medicine skill sets, and so on. I knew enough about lifestyle medicine to figure out that what I was doing up to that point, even though I believed I was doing everything correctly, just wasn't working. So we are going back to the sort of the late 90s. And at that time, the received wisdom, even in the healthcare side of things that I was working in, was that you should be eating your oily fish. You should be having your salad. You should be having a glass of wine with your meal, a red wine, for the resveratrol and all of those sorts of things. And anyway, I didn't realize that with an autoimmune condition, that the types of foods that I was eating at that point, although ostensibly supposed to be healthy, we were all told to eat oily fish, it was actually making me much, much worse and driving that runaway chronic inflammation that was so dangerous. So that's sort of how I came to natural healthcare and so on. And since then, it's been this extraordinary adventure where I've learned yet more and more and more. And so ultimately, the thing that got me well was a whole food, plant-based, raw vegan diet. And actually, I was just watching Lisa and Nate with their fantastic show. I'm going to go and make that beautiful lasagna that they just did. And so the thing is, AJ, it really was remarkable. When I'd been in a wheelchair for 10 years and was told I would never, ever be able to walk again or even stand again, 3 weeks after radically changing my diet and lifestyle for something that I wasn't aware of previously, so essentially raw vegan, I was back up and walking 3 miles up and down the beach every day, doing back-to-back yoga and Pilates classes. Now, I know that sounds so improbable, but I bet that we've got people watching for whom there's been a similar experience. So that side of things really sorted out my health and well-being, amazingly so. But what happened then was I then went on to start to understand what the ramifications are of animal farming, consuming animals and animal products. And so then I became a card-carrying vegan. And I can't believe I didn't know I didn't know anything about veganism. And my one regret about being vegan is that I didn't do it sooner. And I think everybody says that, don't they?
Yeah,
so
I hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. To go back to your question, how much can we rewind our body clocks? Well, when I was very poorly, my biological age, so your biological age is the age you are physiologically and mentally and so on. So it's a physiological measurement that actually has no relationship to your chronological age. A chronological age is the number of birthdays you've had, the number of times you've been around the sun. And so your biological age is a more important measurement. That's what's really important. When I was very seriously ill, I was 38 at the time. My biological age was measuring at 55 years old. So I was a lot older biologically because of all this runaway chronic inflammation that was going on. I went on to this program, did the raw vegan diet, did exercise, appropriate exercise, meditation, qigong, and all of these sorts of things, and really dealt with my response to stressors. Stress response management is so crucial. And so I did all of that. And then I remeasured, and I'd actually gone from 55 years old to 27 years old. So at that point, I was 11 years younger than my chronological age. But here's the really weird thing, because I've maintained this lifestyle really religiously. What's actually happened is that my biological age has stayed stationary. So biologically, I still measure 27. Now, I appreciate I may not look it, but, I am staring 60 down the barrel of a gun. So, I think we have to forgive ourselves, as, for the odd line and wrinkle. But nevertheless, I feel well. I have great energy, and I'm in complete remission from all of my autoimmune conditions, which is quite remarkable because they were so desperately serious. So it just goes to show that what we're talking about on your shows, what you talk about on your channels, has the potential to dramatically change lives and save lives. And I think it's not too much to actually sort of underpin that as dramatically as we can, because the problem is that as far as conventional medicine is concerned, so to come back to that full circle, doctors are just not taught this stuff in medical school. And it's really, really sad that, you've got medical students coming out of training, and they've probably had 3 hours of nutritional training if they're lucky. And if they were away that day, then they got 0 hours. It really is pitiful. And you've got amazing people like Michael Clapper going out into medical schools to teach this stuff that we talk about. I go into medical schools myself. I also teach as well. And, we are getting there. It is baby steps, but we are getting there.
Great. Thank you. Is there like a test we can take to see what our biological age is versus our...
Yes, there are actually. Yes, AJ, it's a very, very good question. Actually, the theory behind biological age is that you could potentially measure the length of your telomeres. These are the little caps on the ends of our chromosomes. The longer they are, it means the biologically younger we are. The shorter they are, the biologically older we are. Now, here's the really interesting thing. Usually the test for telomere length is actually taken from what's circulating white blood cells, because they're obviously ubiquitous. They're all found all over the body. If you were to take skin cells, or if you were to take cells from your tongue, or if you were to take cells from your bone or something like that, your body ages differently according to different organs. We all know that our skin renews quickly, our bones renew every 7 years. So this is why they test white blood cells, telomeres and white blood cells. And the thing is that they can tell you whether you've got young telomeres or shortened older ones, but they can't give you an actual definitive biological age. All you can do is you can track your progression. Now, the downside to that testing is it's incredibly expensive. So I have a better plan for you. On my website, it's called JayneyGoddard.com. And we'll flash that up on the screen. I believe it's also in the show notes. Now, so what I've done on my website is I've set up something which is incredibly useful for people. Anybody who wants to get healthier, happier, and so on, can actually look at ways of rewinding their body clock, which is the title of my most recent book, Rewind Your Body Clock. Because if we take lifestyle approaches to health and well-being, then what will happen is that you can start to lengthen those telomeres. So there's nothing in conventional medicine that will grow telomeres. What grows telomeres are those epigenetic elements that come in, whether it's the food you're eating, whether it's lifestyle choices we make around the way that we deal with stress, whether we meditate, whether we do things like yoga, Pilates, Tai Chi, whether we lift weights and do resistance training, whether we walk on a daily basis, getting outside as much as we possibly can. All of these have been shown to actually lengthen telomeres, therefore making us biologically younger. So if you go to my website, you can log into a completely anonymized biological age tracker. So what I do with this is I give people 5 different exercises, tests, if you will, to do. Things like a skin pinch test. How fast does your skin bounce back when you pinch it? Balance, things like visual acuity, how short or long-sighted are you, reaction speed time, suppleness tests, and so on. Now, these are not tests that I've made up myself. These are all tests that are used in gerontology to actually try to work out how well somebody's doing, or are they aging prematurely, or are they, for whatever reason, aging slowly. So these are legitimate tests. So I've put all of these tests essentially into this tracker. You can do the tests, track your results, log your results, and it'll show you, it'll begin to show your graph. And then in a month's time, you'll get an email from the system. I can't see your results. My team can't see your results. Nobody can. It's only you can see these results, completely anonymized. And so what will happen is it will say, it's time to do your tests again. So you'll go back in, do your tests, input your data, your results, and it will then start to show you the way that your biological age is progressing. Are you aging more quickly in some respects? Are you aging more slowly in other respects? And what's the overall trajectory of your biological age? So it's really wonderful. If you are interested in staying young, happy, healthy, vibrant, sexy, with a brilliant mind, well, why wouldn't anybody want to do that? This is a way of actually tracking your progress. As far as I know, I don't think anybody else has ever done this. And as I say, these are fully legit tests. Everything I do, AJ, as you well know, is really evidence-based. It's backed by research.
Great, thanks. Did you want to share some slides with us today?
I do. Yes, AJ, let me set this up for you, because let's go into it, and I'll go on and share my screen, then I can tell our audience a little bit about this. I just also want to keep an eye on the time, because I know that you've got to you've got more things coming up, so I just want to make sure I'm sticking to the time. What I'm talking about here is, this is a snapshot, it's a snippet of an amazing ebook that condenses a lot of the information that I share in Rewind Your Body Clock. Rewind Your Body Clock went straight in at #1 of all books on Amazon. It was serialized in the Daily Mail twice. It's been a smash hit. It's in translation all over the world and so on. At which, I'm not saying this to boast. The reason I'm telling you this, AJ, is because it has obviously captured the zeitgeist. People need to know this information. People are entranced by this info. So what I've done is I've created an ebook, and it so happens that this ebook is going to be available to all the viewers and listeners on the 3rd of February, which is A, my birthday, and B, it's the start of your bundle. And so anybody who signs up for your bundle will be able to get the actual ebook there, which is really, really exciting. So anyway, look, let's crack on. And I will run through this quite quickly. And I'm going to highlight the salient points for everybody. And I know that we're really engaged, health-aware audience here. So I'm not going to go into the minutiae of stuff that you guys already know. But what I will do is I'll highlight some of the points that are sort of, I think, aha moments for many of us. So first of all, long story short, I'm president of the Complementary Medical Association. The CMA is the world's largest professional association for very highly qualified complementary medicine, natural healthcare practitioners, integrative medicine practitioners, whatever you call yourself. You should be a member of the CMA. It's an amazing organization. We've got our 30th birthday this year. So, and that's the book. And this is a sneaky preview of the wonderful book. So I've got gifts for you today as well. So I'm going to tell you how to get those at the end. But first of all, let's talk about what we should be eating. Now, I know that you guys know all this stuff, but what I want to do is to emphasize the epigenetic effects of what we eat, and the fact that we have far more control over our future than we might even realize. Everything in our lives has the ability to switch on or switch off the genes that code for health or illness. Now, what I would love you to do, if you guys haven't already looked at these research papers by Dean Ornish and his colleagues, have a little look at some of his studies. This is a little bit.ly link to the first study of his, I believe it has then been replicated in different forms, where Dean and his colleagues took men suffering with and diagnosed with prostate cancer who'd opted for a watchful waiting approach. He changed their diet. He gave them yoga to do. He socialized them in a support group. He gave them meditation to do, walking and so on. And they were able to demonstrate that these lifestyle changes, which incorporated a whole food plant-based diet, were able to switch off the genes that coded for prostate cancer. Interestingly enough, by flipping the diet to a standard American diet again, the genes that code for prostate cancer came back on again. Now, we've seen this in other models as well. So it's not just a case of affecting prostate cancer, it affects all of those diseases we wrongly associate with being a natural part of the aging process. So every choice we make today predicts our future health without a shadow of a doubt. Now, we also need to look at some really shocking information at this point. What is the cost of a poor diet? Well, in the UK, obviously, I'm broadcasting from the UK today, it costs us, we're a really, really small country, it costs us 27 billion per annum to deal with the costs of people eating a poor diet. That's £3 million per hour. That's close to $4 million an hour. And we're a tiny, tiny country with about a population of about 60 million or thereabouts. There are wider costs, including things like the treatment of type 2 diabetes, for example, which massively increases this expenditure to above 73 billion per annum. In the USA, however, it's you guys are spending 190 billion per year. That works out as 21,689,497,000 per hour, which is horrendous. Literally every single hour, $21.7 million is spent on the results of poor dietary habits. It's a shocker, isn't it? Worse, I think, in a way, is that $14 billion per year are spent on childhood obesity alone, which is shocking. That is just, and this is not money being spent on trying to resolve these problems. This is money that is being spent to treat these problems. So it's not there's no prevention going on, really. No massive educational campaigns and so on. This is what people are spending as a result of having to deal with the consequences of these diseases. The reason we're talking 2017 figures is because these are the most recent figures that have come out. They will be updated fairly soon. Now we're in 2023. So those are the two references for you there. And what about the ecological perspective? As we know, it takes more than 2,400 gallons of water to produce just 1 pound of meat, but only 25 gallons of water to grow 1 pound of wheat. I mean, it's a shocker, isn't it? You can save more water by not eating a pound of meat than by not showering for 6 months. And of course, with my vegan hat on, from the compassionate perspective, these are our animal brothers and sisters. We really shouldn't be eating them, as I'm sure everybody would agree here. Now, let's quickly touch on hydration. Hydration is crucial for health and well-being and for biological age reversal and so on. Just 2% dehydration, which is very, very little. It affects our physical performance, and cognitive function is compromised as regards executive function, mental skills to get things done, motor coordination, body movements and attention. If any of you are looking after elderly people, one of the things that happens as we get older is that we lose the thirst signal. And it's incredibly easy for older folks to become dehydrated. And this can very often mimic cognitive deficit. So make sure that your old folks are definitely drinking and hydrating properly. And of course, we know when we're properly hydrated because our urine is a pale straw color. Any darker than that, you've got to get fluids on board. Really, really important. The next thing I wanted to just to touch on is sleep. Now, the thing is with sleep is it's a very biologically and metabolically active time. One of the key things I think we should all be doing is setting our alarm clock for the same time every day, even at the weekend, particularly if you suffer with problems related to sleep. So why is sleep so important? Well, poor sleep actually leads to visceral fat accumulation, visceral fat being the fat that gathers around our midsection. Visceral fat in particular surrounds our internal organs, which is pretty bad, as you can, obviously you'll appreciate. But more sinisterly, what has been discovered is that visceral fat is one of the major sites where pro-inflammatory cytokines or hormonal messengers are actually produced, which are driving all of these diseases of aging. So the cancers, the heart disease, the type 2 diabetes, all of these things, the Alzheimer's, the Parkinson's, cognitive deficits of other types, all of these things are being driven by inflammation. And if we don't sleep well, we accumulate visceral fat, which leads to inflammation, which then, of course, leads to obesity, which affects our hormones. It leads to stress, not just mentally, but also physically as well. All of this compromises our cognitive function, which of course leads to further poor sleep, and so on. So this is why we've got to break into the poor sleep cycle. I could talk about ghrelins and leptins, but we don't have time for that right now. But it's something we can certainly talk about when I take a deep dive into sleep in forthcoming programs. So one of the things we must do is we must sleep in complete darkness. It has been shown that in women who've been diagnosed with breast cancer, they do better if they sleep in complete darkness rather than being exposed to night pollution. So what do? We need to sleep in complete darkness, get blackout blinds, maybe get a sleep mask if you can't do any of that, but take this very seriously. It's crucial for your health and well-being. And if you struggle with getting to sleep and staying asleep, these are some foods that will enhance your melatonin output. So we can use bananas, tart cherries, great source of melatonin, porridge oats, sweet corn, rice, ginger, barley, tomatoes, pistachios. Now, not all of those contain melatonin, but many of them will actually help us to produce melatonin. And I know that a lot of people here will be raw vegan, so things like porridge oats are a little bit tricky to have raw unless you do overnight oats, in which case they are still relatively okay. Okay, so now my other gift to you coming up is a wonderful yoga nidra. It's a meditation for deep restorative sleep. It is absolutely wonderful. It's incredibly relaxing. And I made this meditation, I recorded it because I know so many people who really, really struggle. And this recording's been an absolute lifesaver for me when my dad was very, very, very poorly. And I was constantly having to rush him to hospital, to the emergency room at sort of 2, 3, 4 in the morning. And my sleep patterns were all over the place. So I use this. It's only 20 minutes long, but they do say in yoga that yoga nidra for deep restorative sleep is the equivalent of 2 hours really deep sleep. It's extraordinary. Try it. It works. Now, the next thing, going back to this thorny topic of inflammation. Now, I appreciate I'm rushing through this, but the ebook that's coming up in your bundle, AJ, really goes into all of this stuff in depth. As does, obviously, of course, Rewind Your Body Clock, which goes into things in much more depth. And I actually give people a it's like a workbook at the end so they can easily integrate it into their lives. But inflammation is something we do need to be aware of. One of the things that I recommend all my clients do is get regular CRP tests. It stands for C-reactive protein. It's a marker that shows just what your inflammatory levels are. And the type of test you should always ask for is an HS CRP test. It stands for high sensitivity CRP test. Okay, we're lucky enough in the UK to be able to just get these for free on the NHS. In other countries, you may have to pay for them, but they're not terribly expensive, and it is worth tracking. What you're looking for is obviously, if you have got evidence of inflammation, making lifestyle changes. In fact, the changes we're discussing right now will serve to reduce your inflammatory levels, therefore preventing you and from developing those awful debilitating diseases we touched on earlier. And the beauty is that they can be halted and even reversed. I heard Dr. Clapper talking about that just recently, where he was saying that doctors just don't know that these diseases in many cases can be reversed using a lifestyle approach. Now, the next thing, I'm just going to do a quick time check there, we're okay. So the next thing I wanted to touch on is exercise. Now, I've got my little three-legged stool there, and there's a good reason for that. We don't use it for exercise, but I always teach with my clients and when I'm lecturing at medical schools and so on, that we need a three-legged stool approach to exercise. So first of all, I always like to encourage people to do steady state cardio. And many people talk about getting everybody out for at least a minimum of 30 minutes a day for a minimum of 5 times a week. That's the absolute least that people need to do. Now, here's the thing. You don't need to do, if you're really debilitated, if you're really, really poorly, you don't need to do all 30 minutes in one go. If you're really ailing and you're very, very unwell, you can do a few minutes and then a rest, and a few minutes slightly later on and a rest, but you've got to build up to the 30 minutes a day as a minimum. This in itself is one of the most important factors for health and well-being, as I'm sure most of our viewers will totally embrace and totally endorse. So this is steady state cardio. So it's not, let me just go back to that for a sec, it's not running on a treadmill and really doing all your cardio, going to aerobics classes and so on. Those have their place and they're great for cardiovascular health. And I'm not saying not to do them, but what we must do to maintain health and holistic well-being is our steady state cardio. One of the things the NHS over here in the UK is asking everybody to do is to go and do, it's like they want you to do little groups of 10 minutes of brief, swift walking. They want you to get out and walk at a speed. So you can just hold conversation, but it's difficult. They want you to get out and to walk as fast as you possibly can. And the idea is they're trying to push everybody to do 3 lots of 10 minutes every day. And it's a great health initiative. It will reduce visceral fat. This is one of the things that does reduce belly fat. And it will dramatically make a huge dent in inflammation-driven diseases, including things like type 2 diabetes and so on. So the next part of the three-legged stool is resistance training. Resistance training, of course, as you know, is lifting weights, getting into the gym or using body weight exercises for that matter. It's all good. It all works. Why do we want to do resistance training? It's because, of course, yes, it helps your muscles. But did you know it also helps to strengthen bone, because you've got attachments and insertions of your muscles into your bones and onto your bones. And you know what? When you put a muscle under strain, it actually then stresses the bone. And if you can, a stressed bone is a stronger bone. So this is why we need to do resistance exercise. The other factor is that resistance exercise increases our production of human growth hormone. Human growth hormone tends to literally fall off a cliff after we hit our very early 20s. And so then what happens is that our body shape starts to change, our muscle to fat ratio starts to change, we become a little bit less motivated. Human growth hormone does all sorts of really interesting things for us. So resistance exercise upregulates the production of HGH, human growth hormone. It's very important for us. It's also very good for us psychologically as well. It really does help with anxiety and mental health issues and more. And then, of course, on that same flavor, we've got mind-body exercise. So by that, I'm talking about yoga, for example, Pilates, which is really a mind-body exercise. A lot of people think it's glorified sit-ups, but it really isn't. You've got to get your mind into your body to really concentrate on what you're doing. And of course, Tai Chi and Qi Kung, all of these are beautiful mind-body exercises that have been shown to improve so many measures of health and well-being, mentally, emotionally, and physically, and of course, spiritually as well. So I'm just wondering whether any of our viewers are sort of absolutely convinced that they know the best kind of exercise. There is one outstanding type of exercise that has been shown to be the very best for rewinding your body clock to become biologically younger. What do you think would be the best exercise? I'm just wondering if we've got...
Gosh, I mean, I don't want to be wrong. I mean, walking? I mean, because everybody can do that.
Yes, absolutely. It incorporates with me. I'm just going to go onto my phone and just see if I can see any comments. No, I'm not. The comments aren't coming up for me. It doesn't matter. But AJ, you definitely have a point there. So what it is, strangely enough, is it's a type of exercise that incorporates the mind, it incorporates the body, and it incorporates one of the most important elements in age rewind, which is socialization. Good socialization can reverse your aging process by up to 9 years. It can give you 9 years of healthy longevity. So it's actually ballroom dancing, because you've got to move around, you've got to move your body, you've got to learn choreography, you've got the socialization aspect. And this is being shown time and time again in research to be the most powerfully anti-aging or anti-aging exercise approach there is. So get your ballroom shoes on and go out and learn to tango with your beloved. Or maybe find a beloved whilst you're tangoing. Next, we've got a crucial element in complete wellness is mental, emotional poise, mindfulness, and meditation. So there are so many benefits of meditation. We've got brain empowerment, mind focus, stress relief, helping us to reach our goals, mood enhancement, having the ability to stay centered within the self. There's balance and poise, gives us a sense of connection, not just to other people, but also to the universe as a whole, to our animal brothers and sisters, to nature. There's a huge effect of mindfulness and meditation on our immune system. It does increase our telomere length, making us biologically younger, improves heart health, increases energy. And this is just the icing on the cake. There are so many advantages to meditation. I just can't even begin to sort of go there right now. But what I have is a gift. I've made an instructional recording for you so that you don't have to sit down and read a piece of paper or a book going, okay, so what do? I have to sit down. Okay, what do I do next? Oh, okay, now I have to close my eyes, right? Okay, now what do I do next? I have to open your eyes and read the next bit. So I've made a recording for you so you can just sit, relax, scan your body, relax your body, and then you can actually start to get into the relaxation response technique. It was a technique that was pioneered by the truly wonderful Dr. Herbert Benson from the Benson Henry Institute at Harvard Medical School. I was fortunate enough to learn this technique directly from him when I did a training in mind-body medicine up at Harvard Medical School with him. And so you are getting this technique essentially straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak, no disrespect to Dr. Benson. Most extraordinary man, and his book, The Relaxation Response, is well worth reading because he details in it all of the science. And if you're of a mind like me, I like to see evidence that these things work and that I'm not just wasting my time. And so you'll find all of that, those data in that wonderful, wonderful book. It's a really small book, a very quick read, but a real eye-opener. Now, the next bit, slightly hidden by us over here, AJ, is happiness. I'm just wondering if I can grab us and put us over there. That's it. Yes, I have. So yes, this next step is happiness. Now, it used to be thought that we were born with a set happiness level and that it was fixed, and you were either a happy person or you weren't. And that is not true. There's been so much research in the field of happiness and well-being and its connection to health and well-being. And it's been discovered that actually we can dramatically improve our happiness levels. One of the best ways of doing this is by creating a gratitude journal. One of the things that's been shown to be most effective in the happiness research fields is a journaling technique called 3 Good Things. And this was pioneered by the wonderful scientists at the Greater Good Research Center at Berkeley in California. And what they suggest we do is that we write down 3 good things that happened to us today. And you do it at the end of the day. And the idea is that you add as much detail to this. So for example, let's say, oh, it was a beautifully sunny day. You could just write that, and that's nice, of course, but you could then say, I heard the birds singing, I could feel the sun on my shoulders, I could smell the flowers, you know, and to really embellish, really add all of your sensory input into this. And then you pick the next thing. And again, you add your sensory input into it. And then the next thing. So every day you write 3 good things that happened to you. You do it at the end of the day. The research with this technique has shown that even among people who are dealing with cancer diagnoses, for example, this makes a difference to their outcome. It really is so powerful. And of course, what's so lovely is that by writing these things and involving all of your senses, we're taking advantage of the brain's extraordinary ability to rewire itself. It's a phenomenon called neuroplasticity. And when we rewire the brain in this way, it facilitates beautiful thoughts, happy thoughts, so that we're more able to preferentially express those happy thoughts, to feel happiness, to feel gratitude. And that actually is life-changing in and of itself. And when we're doing these things, again, it contributes to a rewind in our biological age. So all of these things, you can see how it all comes together. And this is when we talk about holistic approaches, this is really what we mean. Okay, I touched on socialization earlier. One of the most fundamentally age rewinding things you can do is to socialize. And particularly if you have a group of friends that you're working with towards a common goal. So whether you're a group of, like, for example, in my situation, I've got a group of ladies that I dance with, and we do a lot of shows for charity. So we're always working together towards a common goal. You might have a group of friends who go on a litter picking up expedition every month or so. You know, so find groups of people that you can get together with and you can do things with and you can plan with. And this will add extraordinarily healthy years. So what we don't want to do in life extension and so on is we don't want to just live longer, but be really unhealthy at the end of our lives. We actually want to extend our health span, not just our lifespan, but our health span. So we're living longer, happily and healthily. That, you know, I think we would all agree with that. Nobody wants to descend into old age and be unhealthy and have a horrible quality of life. Now, the next thing that we just need to cover is getting out into nature, whether you call it vitamin N for nature. This is something I picked up when I was up at Harvard with Dr. Benson and his colleagues. They call it vitamin N. Get yourself some vitamin N, get out into nature. And then we've got house plants. If you can't get out, if you live in a totally urban environment, you've got no nature around you. grab yourself some houseplants, they count as well. Nurturing a houseplant, having something to look after, makes a massive contribution to health and well-being, mentally, emotionally, and physically. Getting out into and doing some gardening if you're able to, even if you don't have a garden. There are so many urban gardens that are shared gardens that you can get out to. I saw some wonderful initiatives in the USA just recently where people are taking tracts of land and coming together as communities and growing vegetables. What a wonderful thing to do. And the interesting thing about gardening is that there are soil microbes that when you disturb soil, they float up into the atmosphere, you breathe them in, and they actually have an effect on us to make us happier. It's the strangest thing, but there you are. I mean, isn't nature amazing? And then finally, the most important thing is mindset. Now, if you are of a mind to go and do some reading, you could do worse than reading Professor Ellen Langer's counterclockwise study. She believes, as a result of this study, where she immersed a group of people in an environment, in a house that was essentially from 20 years ago, when these people felt that they were at the peak of their health and well-being, just by putting this group of people into this house that was from 20 years ago. So all of the decor was from 20 years ago, all of the news coming through the TV and the radio was from 20 years prior, and so on. She was able to make the most extraordinary rewinds to their biological age. They were even taller after a week. They were stronger after a week. Their blood sugar was more stable and better. Their blood pressure was more stable and improved and balanced. Hormonal balance had improved. Cognitive function just after 1 week. So it just goes to show, and Langer believes this. She says 95% of aging is related to mindset. So the reason that I've got a jukebox there is because I want to give you my final tip, which is how to create your own immersion environment. So what do we do? What I'd love you to do is have a good think. What was the music you listened to when you were a teenager? Who were the bands that you loved? Who were the singers you idolized? Who did you have? Whose posters did you have up on your bedroom wall if you were a typical teenager? Now, many people will say, but, teenage angst, when we're teenagers, life is difficult, it's troubling and so on. But here's the thing. Yes, that can be true. But biologically, hormonally, you're at your peak, your growth hormone is surging. So by doing this immersion environment where you are listening to the music you listened to when you were a teenager, maybe poring over pictures from that time of all of those bands and so on, you are giving yourself youth cues. You are rewinding your outlook, your mind, and so on, and your emotions. And this is what will create an immersion environment for you so that you can mimic Professor Langer's rewind study. We're going to finish now with this picture, just to show how obsessed everybody is about reversing our biological age. This is a picture that was painted in 1540 by Lucas Cranach the Elder. And if you just take a look over this side, you'll see all of these people are turning up. This is the Fountain of Youth. Everybody was obsessed with the Fountain of Youth. They were turning up. They're all fairly decrepit. You've got people being drawn in this one's in a it sort of looks like a wheelbarrow. This one's on a stretcher. These ones are all looking really rather the worse for wear. Anyway, they jump in, they swim around in the Fountain of Youth, and as you move across, you'll see they're starting to look younger and younger and younger, and they're getting out. And look at them, they're all sprightly now, and they're all looking rather wonderful, and jumping in and going in, getting dried and changed, and then they go off and they have a lovely meal. And then after that, it looks as though they're all paired up and disappearing into the bushes. So we won't comment on that. But it does look as though they've had a really lovely time. So I just want to say my gifts and resources are all available at JayneyGoddard.com. You can track your biological age there as well, completely securely. And do remember that my top 10 tips taken from my book, Rewind Your Body Clock, are going to be dropping in your beautiful bundle, AJ. Am I right in thinking, and I think I read this on one of Lissa's posts, but am I right in thinking the bundle is now something like $90,000?
Well, I don't know what to tell you, but we're actually not supposed to even be talking about it. And I didn't know how to tell you because it was in your presentation. So really, we're not even allowed to discuss it. And I don't know how I'm going to edit this video to fix that, but it's not something that we even talk about.
I'm so sorry. I actually didn't realize because I had seen it. Oh, I do beg your pardon. Well, I hope you can edit that out. If not, I'll send you something else. And then we've got recordings and meditations, obviously the Yoga Nidra for deep restorative sleep and the relaxation response I touched on. And then you can join me at my private Facebook group where we can discuss lots of health and well-being questions and answers, and then of course all the usual places. And yep, so let me just finish there. And yes, there we go, AJ. I don't know if there are any questions.
Guys, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat with 4 question marks. Oh, okay, here's one. What health issue caused you to be in the wheelchair?
Okay, so it was rheumatoid arthritis, which I mentioned briefly. It's a systemic condition that majority of the time presents with dramatic joint destruction and damage, but it actually, of course, it affects everything. When I was at my worst and I was in hospice care, my lungs, liver, kidneys, and brain were all horribly inflamed. And so that's why they really didn't think I was going to make it, because literally everything was affected.
Wow. Did you do 100% raw to reverse it?
I did. Absolutely. Yes. Yes. That's it. So that's what I did. First of all, I had friends who were raw food experts, and they were nagging me. I thought I was doing everything right, AJ. You know, as I said, I thought I was leading a healthy lifestyle, being a healthcare practitioner, and so on. And what we now know with autoimmune illness is this concept of molecular mimicry. So what's been discovered not so long ago is that if you have problems with gut permeability, when you consume animal proteins, the theory is, and obviously research is still working on this, but those animal proteins actually get through the gut wall. They're not supposed to. This puts your immune system on massive red alert. So your immune system goes to destroy those perceived invaders, and then it carries on looking for other molecules that look identical to those. So that's when you have this massive assault on your connective tissue, because your immune system wrongly, it fails to be able to differentiate between what's called self and non-self. So that's the molecular mimicry theory.
Nice. Did you stay 100% raw?
I did for a good few years. And then what I found was that for me, and I don't think this is the same for everybody, but I do know is true for some people. What I have found is that I don't tend to be the best sleeper anyway at the best of times. And I found that raw gave me so much energy that I would stay awake. And, you know, I was sort of found I was getting just a few hours sleep. And I felt really that wasn't quite right for me. So what I do is I'm raw right the way through until dinner. Then at dinner, I may well have sweet potatoes or a baked potato, that sort of thing. I eat in a very similar way to the way that you do, AJ, actually, interestingly enough.
That sounds like a nice balance, because, you know, we had Lisa and Nate on yesterday, and they say they sleep like 9 hours a night. And I had the same experience as you, Jayney, that I was raw for 2 years and I just couldn't sleep. And I didn't like that feeling of enough. I love having a lot of energy, but enough was enough.
Absolutely. All that extra time in the day is good. But there's always, I think maybe, I don't know if it's conditioning or, you know, and we think, oh gosh, we're supposed to have this many hours of sleep a night. But, you know, there is so much evidence, isn't there, to say that if you don't get adequate sleep, then it can affect all sorts of things, from hormonal balance to cognitive health and so on. It hasn't ever been studied in raw groups, you know, whether this sleep reduction, sleep requirement reduction is beneficial to us or whether it could potentially be harmful. We just don't know. But for me, I feel better with just a little bit of cooked food. And on my retreats, for example, if I've only got people with me for a week, I don't tend to do fully raw with them. I'll give them raw and then maybe a potato or sweet potatoes or a nice grain for dinner, just to make sure they get adequate, refreshing, relaxing, deep sleep, because it's that restorative thing that we need to do on health and well-being retreats. If I had the luxury of having people with me for longer, then I would be able to potentially maybe take them through, sort of build them up to fully raw for perhaps a week and then build them down again, and take them back. So they've experienced it, they know what they're doing, but I'm not exhausting them. So, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of fully raw people out there who say, no, never had a problem with it, you get used to it, but we're all different. And that, I think, is the most important thing to remember.
Yeah. Had you heard about water fasting back then?
No, I hadn't. Funnily enough, I had been looking into various things, and I hadn't yet at that point come across Frank's work, our friend Dr. Frank Sabatino, my partner, my honey, and anyway, so I was really delighted to find out about that. I've done quite a lot of fasts now myself, and boy, is it quick at getting inflammation down. I remember I was just about to lead a retreat in Spain, and I was having a flare-up. I'd been through a really stressful time, and I was having a flare-up at that point. I did a fast with Frank, and it brought that inflammation right down. Within 3 days, I went from a CRP reading of 46, which is very high, to undetectable in 3 days. Now, there's no medication that can do that. That's the really interesting thing about these approaches, AJ. There's no medication that can do that. And as we know, after a 3-day fast, as soon as you get into ketosis, you've got all of that autophagy happening. So essentially, you are renewing your body, and your immune system is completely reborn, essentially. They're starting to do 3-day fasts in the UK. I don't know if they're doing it in the USA. 3-day fasts prior to chemo treatment. The reason being, this is in hospitals on the NHS, the reason being is because what they're finding is that patients need less chemo and they respond better to it with less toxicity. So, it's interesting, it's hitting the mainstream.
Wow. I don't know if you want to answer this, but there's a viewer named, I just saw her name a second ago, Lori, who's watching live, wanted to know if you'd be willing to say how old you are. You don't have to. Yeah.
February the 3rd, I'm going to be 59.
Wow. Oh my God. You look amazing for any age, but that's incredible.
I was going to say, AJ, you look amazing.
Well, but boy, that is amazing. Well, so apparently what you're doing works.
It does. And what's nice is I have the data that actually show that it works. This is the thing, because I'm a great self-experimenter. I think you have to be in this field. And so I think it's really important that we have the data that show that, these things, that they do work. I mean, obviously, I've got my patients, my clients and so on. I see this stuff day in, day out. But I do want people to know that this stuff does work. And it's just so much a happier way of being as well, because we're not just doing things necessarily for our health and well-being. Yes, that's lovely, but we're also doing it for the animals and for the planet and the environment and so on. It just ticks all the boxes. It checks all the boxes on every level, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So Annette wants some information on fasting, but you're coming back. Well, you're coming back many months, but next month, I believe you're coming back with Dr. Frank Sabatino, who's somewhat of an expert in that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we're going to be talking about, fasting is one of the most important things that I think he brings whenever he speaks. People are just entranced by him and his expertise. And he's been at it a long, long time. He's another person who looks good, very, very, very good. I'm not going to say good for his age, because I don't think we should say that. I think
I know. It's so funny that you said that, Jayney, because when people say you look good for 63, it's like, it's sort of almost a left-handed compliment, I get their motive, but it doesn't,
Oh gosh, I know, absolutely. Yes, I think what we have to do is either stop talking about age completely, or we just have to, drop that bit. You look good. Full stop. But yeah, Frank's going to be with me next month. That's the plan. We'll be talking about water only fasting and its impact on aging and other measures of health and well-being right across the board.
Absolutely. Here's a nice comment from Angela. Jayney is basically a goddess, stunning inside out, But then on the other hand, people, maybe they have to be realistic too when they're aging, because, I get people, like a lot of people make comments like, oh my God, you look so old. Well, so old for what? How, do you know what I mean? Like it, people do age. I mean, even if they take care of themselves, eat perfectly, stay out of the sun. I mean, at some point, realistically, we're going to look older than we did when we were 20.
Of course we are. Of course we are. Absolutely. Yes. I mean, we're exposed. We have the chronology, of course, but we're exposed to pollutants. We're exposed to EMFs. We're exposed to all sorts of things that we have no control over. Also, of course, we perhaps have a legacy of whatever we did prior to finding this lifestyle. I mean, there's no such thing as, hello, baby.
I know. She's speaking of aging, when she was gray her whole life, so she still looks like a puppy.
Yes. She's gorgeous.
I think this is what keeps us young, having pets. I was saying to a doctor yesterday, this should be the 7th pillar of lifestyle medicine.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And then, again, there's good evidence to really back that up. But yeah, I mean, none of us are going to live forever. That hasn't been discovered yet. But what we can do is, I mean, the ideal really, and I think actually Frank talks about this, and I've seen other people talk about it as well. The idea is that, as I touched on earlier, we don't want to extend our lifespan just for lifespan extension's sake. Because if we extend our lifespan and we're living into our hundreds, but we're very, 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 very seriously ill for the last 20, 30 years of our lives, well, that's horrible. It's torture. And you're dependent upon other people. Nobody wants to live like that. But what we really do need to do is we need to keep our health and well-being at such a level, essentially go along as a sort of sort of on a straight line as much as we possibly can, being as well as we possibly can for as long as we possibly can, and then essentially when it's our time to go, literally just fall off that cliff, and go quickly. You see people, I think the Queen was a really good example of that. David Attenborough, he's 90, 95, 96 now. He's still incredibly active, incredibly healthy. I suspect he's going to be one of these people who lives a long time, that falls off a cliff. I mean, not literally, I'm talking figuratively. You're well, and then suddenly you just go. And then I think, quite honestly, that's, without lingering, I think it's the best any of us could really expect. And that's kind of what we're trying to achieve with all of these lifestyle interventions.
That's fantastic. Well, we really can rewind our body clock, and we look forward to your next appearance to tell us more information on how we can do that. Maybe water fasting is a piece of the puzzle.
Could well be. Yep, there's evidence.
Well, to be determined. Thank you so much, Jayney. It was a wonderful presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, AJ.
Yep. We'll see you next month. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back in about 2 minutes. I just need to reset the Zoom. I don't know how this worked out, 2 back-to-back shows, but we have Dr. Andrew Freeman, who's going to be talking about the year in plants 2020.